welcome back to the latest episode of the Be Better podcast. Thank you, as ever, to our listeners. I'm meeting increasingly more listeners of the podcast as I'm out and about. That's quite scary because who knew that people were actually listening? But thank you. If you're a new listener, thank you so much. If you have been listening for a while, please don't forget, give us a review somewhere on whatever platform you're listening on. It will help us ultimately. But anyway, enough of that. Welcome to today's guests. So today I have got Robyn from Hello Period. How's it going?
Good morning. It's going really great.
Excellent. And where are you dialing in from today?
I'm in sunny Hawke's Bay.
The sunny Hawke's Bay.
So yeah, central North Island.
Nice.
For all those international listeners.
For the international listeners, we do have a few international listeners.
Yeah,
so yeah, it's sort of east coast of the North Island of New Zealand. I've very rarely had a bad day's weather when I've been to Hawke's Bay. I used to be, when I was a medical rep, I used to go to Hastings Hospital. What is it, Hastings Hospital or Napier?
Yep. Yeah, Hastings Hospital.
Yeah. So yeah, I used to go there quite often, and every time I was there, it was always a beautiful sunny day. So not today.
No, well, funny story actually. It's sweltering today, and I'm in a jersey only because it's got our logo on it.
That's commitment to the brand. So I love it.
This is like total brand commitment because I am really hot right now.
All right, really hot. All right, you know. Yeah, nice one. Yeah, commitment to the branding. Love it. It's what all good small business owners are about. Yeah, I pretty much wear a Grow Good t-shirt everywhere I go. Much to my wife's disdain, I think on the weekend she's like, "Oh, can you not just put something else on?" It's like, well, why wear someone else's brand when I have a brand? Anyway.
Do people ask you whether you're a gardener?
Yeah, that has come up sometimes. Or do I sell weed? So, I mean, if we were in the States, in fact, maybe we should look into this. We could have our own brand of medicinal cannabis. Help you grow good. We'll help you get some good ideas to grow your business. Okay, well, we'll give you a split on the royalties on any of those sales. That seems reasonable. So for people who don't know who you are and don't know who or what Hello is all about, give us the info.
Sure. We are a sustainable period care brand. I am the co-founder. We founded Hello Period. Well, we actually were originally called Hello Cup in 2017, and the reason why we were called Hello Cup was we launched with a menstrual cup and really never had any plans to go beyond that. But now we're the only sustainable period company in the world that has a product for everyone. So we do menstrual cups, menstrual discs, period underwear, pads, specialty menstrual cups for different cervix heights, and liners. So everything.
Nice. So yeah, I guess for the males listening in, I mean, I live with my my wife, my mother-in-law, and my daughter. So it's a fairly estrogen-filled environment. We're not quite at that stage of having to fully, A-level biology. I've got some vague, memory of the menstrual cycle and what goes on. But maybe, I mean, well, in general, do you think most women know why they should be using your type of product versus something else, or do you feel that
I think
needs to be explained, or is it just for us blokes who don't really know what goes on? But if you could maybe explain like why why is what you're doing and why it's different from what was before, I think that'd be useful.
So sustainable period care, or reusable period care, I should say, is that's the market that we specifically focus on. It replaces single-use products, so replaces tampons and pads. So the tampon equivalent would be a menstrual cup or a menstrual disc, so they're internal products. And then a pad, single-use pad equivalent would be our period underwear or our reusable pads. There's been very little innovation in the period care space. So when we started in 2017, absolutely, like literally no one had really heard of menstrual cups, and we were explaining what they were to virtually everyone. And you fast forward 6 years, and that the landscape has totally changed. So they've absolutely become more mainstream, but still not everyone knows what they are or how to use them and things like that. So essentially a menstrual cup will hold 3 to 5 times more and disc will hold 3 to 5 times more blood than a tampon. But not only the benefit of that is, awesome for the user, but if we're talking about planet benefits and cost saving benefits, they last at least 5 years. So each product will replace over 2,000 single use tampons and pads. So, and the same sort of numbers with underwear and pads. And I guess our biggest challenge is to educate and to get people, when you've been so used to one way of doing things, it takes a lot to change people's mind. And it's in the same way that, a lot of us took a long time to switch to reusable shopping bags, plastic bags. It seems like a crazy concept now, that we had single use plastic shopping bags at every single shop, and but now people are like, yeah, I'll grab my reusable bag. And so it's the same thing. Once you've tried it and you've got the hang of it and realize that it's actually better for you, better for the environment, it's an easy win at that point.
Yeah, it's because beyond the B Corp stuff that we do, there's a bunch of other training that we offer to B Corps. And one of the sessions I've got is a change management session, like really just high level, like introduction to the idea of change. And the one thing I remember from that is the longer you've been doing something a certain way, the harder it is to think about changing, because it is a habit. And that's the same for habits, or just the way we've always done something in this company. If you're trying to introduce a new software platform or whatever it is in the company, the longer someone's been used to the old one, the more resistant they will be, because it's just easy. And for whatever reason, you've been, I guess, is also within sort of certain personality types. Some people are more loyal in general, maybe to a brand or what have you.
Totally. And I think, back to why. The why for me was, I had terrible periods all my life, and I'd heard about menstrual cups, but I'd never tried one because I didn't know anyone else who used them. So I thought that there must be a reason for that, and they couldn't be that great. But then curiosity got the better of me, and I tried one, and it really changed my life in terms of it held more and it was more comfortable. So from that moment on, it was about how do we make these mainstream and convince everyone else, and again work on changing that habit, because there's no reason. I often say my end goal of this business is for tampons and single-use pads to only be seen in museums as part of an exhibition on how people used to manage their periods in the olden days before better things came along, because it kind of, that is it. We wouldn't be creating a product that was less comfortable, or so everything we do is about wanting the user to go, oh, there's no way I'm going back. And that's the main feedback we get is, I wish I'd made the switch sooner. So
nice.
It's what
yeah, that's super cool, because I think there's so much we look back on. I mean, one of the examples I use when you sort of talk about purpose, and why quite often we end up living lives that are maybe not ours to a degree. There was a guy called Edward Bernays who was in charge. Well, he created like the modern world of consumer marketing in terms of how to get people to buy things that they don't really need. And the example of him was he got more women to smoke cigarettes in the 30s and 40s because it was mainly a male habit. But the companies recognise that 50% of the population aren't even smoking this thing. So, but we look back and go, well, why would you make someone have a product that we now know is bad for you? And I think we'll look back on a whole bunch of stuff as we look, so basically as we look back, because one of the things he got GPs to do was prescribe cigarettes. It's like, how do we sell more cigarettes? Get a GP to prescribe it. So I think we look back on that and go, well, that's just insane. Like what
it is so insane.
What GP would do that? But equally, Yeah, and so I love that analogy of like a museum of these relics of God. Can you imagine that? You know, great grandma had to
Yeah.
use these things. God, what a crazy idea! Were they insane back then? I think there's so
Yeah.
much of our day-to-day life that we just take. I think it's the thing, we take so much for granted, so much for normal, that we just think, well, this is the best that anyone's ever invented, because it probably is based on where
Yeah.
we are in the space-time continuum. But actually, is it the best that we could have? Probably not.
Yeah.
So
And you know, again, it's in that same vein. It's like until people start questioning things and it seeps in, and it's again, like, I think you could have the same argument around plastic straws. You
yeah.
know, why do we even need a straw? You know, we all know how to drink out of a glass. You know, even paper ones. You know, they're fine, but there's still an add-on that
it's
doesn't provide anything of
yeah,
use.
it's pretty low value. Yeah,
Yeah.
in terms of its utility. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. So
Yeah.
when you sort of launched the company, did you do a bunch of research into the history of
No.
traditional period care? Do you
Oh,
sort of know where the modern range of pads and tampons come? Because one of the only thing I guess I'd really heard about, particularly tampons, was the possible toxic shock, or the
yeah.
possible elements of toxicity in it, which again you sort of go,
Yeah.
well, that seems counterintuitive. Why would you put something inside you that is possibly going to harm you? So yeah, do you know how
Yeah.
we got
I,
to where we were?
well, I think, you know, obviously traditionally that period care was all external, and then people wanted something a bit more convenient for, you know, something they could wear while swimming, or that wasn't um, as bulky. And so, you know, that's where
Mm,
tampons came into the picture. And then that tampons are associated with toxic shock because um, essentially because they can dry the user out, and then that increases the
right,
risk of an abrasion. So toxic shock is a bacterial infection that gets into your bloodstream. So it's actually nothing to do with the product or the period, but it's there are more cases associated with tampon use just because of that drying out situation, where, you know, then if you have an abrasion and you creating a nice warm moist environment for bacteria, and they love that. So I often say to people, toxic shock is not a female thing. It's also not a period thing.
right,
Jim Henson, who created the Muppets, died from toxic shock syndrome. So, you know, it's just if there's that pathway for the bacteria.
right,
But I guess then that leads on to the benefits of using a menstrual cup or a menstrual disc over a tampon, is that they're not drying the user out. It's collecting period blood, and then it's basically just pulled out a bit like a tampon and then emptied and reinserted. So it's just there's a like a tiny handful of cases of toxic shock syndrome associated with using cups and discs, but that's since 1930, and in those, I think there's actually only 2 recorded cases.
right,
They had been left in for days and days, like basically the user had forgotten about it.
right.
And yeah, so um, much safer, in short. So again, as well as the reusable benefits, so it's all these things that have built up and kind of
Mm,
motivated us and really inspired us, I think, to encourage that next generation of users. So Mary and I, my co-founder, both had daughters when we found, well, we still have daughters, but when we founded the business, they were
mm,
coming into their teens,
yep,
and we kind of just wanted more choice for them. So we're not the type of people who would ever say you have to use a menstrual cup or a menstrual disc. You know, what we can offer is providing alternative choices, which until recently have just not been on the table, because you've got um, large companies. You know, there's this monopoly on traditional monopoly on period products, where you've got large companies who are not motivated to make anything that is reusable or sustainable, because they have users, half the world, who buy their product every month. You know, it's a cash cow. Why would they want to do anything to change that? So the interesting thing, you know, it's not just our business, obviously, but it's a lot of great purposeful businesses have been able to start thanks to social media and the internet. You know, back in sort of say the 1960s or 70s, and even 80s and 90s, all you could really do to advertise was to have a big budget and take out a newspaper ad, or an ad on television. You couldn't reach people in the way that we can now and create these sort of mini movements that grow. And that's been particularly amazing, I think, in the period space, where we can reach an audience and educate them and say, hey, you could try something else if you want to. And a lot of our customers are, our customer base is definitely skewed to that younger sort of 20 to 30-year-old consumer who really are really mindful about the planet, really mindful about what they buy, what they put in their bodies. There's no regulation about, there's no mandatory labeling requirements for tampons and pads, which is crazy. And I think it's probably because periods have just been tainted by this, let's not talk about them because they're it involves blood and yuck, and let's just park them somewhere else. So as a result, a lot of the products out there have just fallen under the radar of, they should be being looked at because they go into a very, sensitive area of the body.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's so crazy.
We were hanging out with the team from Grin Natural, who do the toothpaste products.
Yeah,
like I think it was their toothpicks. They're like FDA approved for sale in the US. So it's like dental products need to be FDA approved, but period products don't. Yeah, that.
Well, no, we are FDA. Our products are FDA approved.
But in terms of that testing, I guess you're sort of saying that efficacy. I think you're so right about the embedded way that companies operate. So one of our clients, Ollie from MedSouth, they do repurposed medical device products. So the main product they started off with were these leg stockings that they use that you put on people post-operatively, and they were traditionally single use. And I spent 10 years as a medical device rep, and there was always this big argument between, well, is single use better than re-sterilizing it? And the big push from all the companies is, well, think of the health risk. If things get cleaned, is it going to be cleaned perfectly? Whereas fresh one out of the packet, you can guarantee safety the whole time. But you're right, actually, no, we want you buying 1,000 of these a week, not one every 10 years.
That's right. And you look at those, even those compression socks, and in the same when I talk about the waste generated by single-use period products, and I normally talk in just the tampons themselves or the pads themselves, that's not even bringing into the equation the packaging and the pamphlets that are in each one, and it multiplies
pretty quickly.
Really does.
Yeah, it's insane. So what were you doing before this? What was the journey to suddenly? I know.
And this is probably why, because only a crazy person would start a business in the way we started our business. So I was a journalist, and then I started my career as a journalist, a newspaper journalist, working for papers around New Zealand, and then moved into marketing. And Mary, my best friend from school and co-founder, was a nurse. So we actually had these great complementary skill sets in terms of, I had the curious mind, I guess, and love of words and marketing, because a huge part of what we do is making periods fun in the sense, kind of talking about them in a colloquial way. And really, I think what stood out for me when we were doing our research was how maybe scarily people were talking about periods and kind of talking about them in a way that just was really dull and boring as well. And so just, again, tapping into that younger audience. So that's where my love of words and writing came to the fore. So, and I think Mary, with her medical background and knowledge of anatomy and things like that, really helped when it came to us designing our products, because we designed all our products from scratch. There's a lot of players in the period care space that just, a lot of brands will just buy crappy white label products from Alibaba and put their own name on them. And, I don't have much time for that. So, from the get-go, we approached things differently, I guess, in the sense that it was always customer-led. We only wanted to create things that we wanted to use and that really appealed to us. But we didn't have any startup knowledge, any business knowledge. We didn't do any, I always say, we'd done no sort of research. We literally designed a product, funded it, and set up a Rumpty website and did some Googling and worked out how to start selling and just hit go. And both of us really expected that we'd be able to keep our day jobs. And this was kind of going to be our passion project. But immediately we found our people, and also I think immediately we found women who were saying, thank God, I've been waiting for something that is better than what I'm using. And yeah, we quit our jobs pretty quickly.
Nice. That's super cool. Yeah, there's quite a few people we've interviewed recently with like a bit of a similar story. And I think there's like Perry Drysdale I'm thinking of from Untouched World. And there was another female founder owner, all very similar stories where you didn't have any business acumen or knowledge. And you were just kind of like, there's a really cool quote from Neil Young, the singer. I remember watching a documentary about his career, I guess, to date. And they asked him, because he was mainly the guitarist in a band. And then they said, well, how did you get into the singing? And he just said, oh, this one night, we were short of a singer. And so I just grabbed the mic and started shouting at it. And I just think that's such a good analogy for starting a business. Like sometimes you just got to grab the mic and just shout on it, and you don't know what's going to happen. But if you've got that passion, and I think again, it's like all the companies that we interview, there's a real mission, there's a real purpose behind it. Whereas, so like yesterday, we spoke. Tamara, my colleague, and I spoke at University of Canterbury Centre for Entrepreneurship, just introducing them to the idea of B Corp. They've all got startup ideas. All of them are purpose driven. 8 to 10 years ago, when I've done the gig, off and on for about 8 to 10 years. 8 to 10 years ago, there'd be like drone delivered pizza. It's like, just we're going to create a unicorn that's going to try and become $1 billion company, but fundamentally selling something that people don't really need. But I think it's definitely, and I don't know if you saw, there was an article in NBR, which is like a New Zealand, I think it's New Zealand Business Review or New Business Review. The data's now unequivocal that B Corps outperform in terms of resiliency and financial performance over the long term. And I think for me, it's that sense of purpose. And if you're doing something positive and contributing, people want to get behind it. Whereas if you just launched, I don't know, like the Kiwi version of Tampax, would it have been as impactful? Would you have been as interested? Would it have got the traction? Probably not.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think B Corp businesses tend to be, the people behind them tend to be, not necessarily your typical person. They, I think their interest in their customers always outshines everything else. And I often say B Corp businesses can sleep at night. There's some businesses out there, I don't know how owners can live with themselves with what they're doing and the lack of thought or innovation. If it's all about money, and there's no care in what you're doing whatsoever, it's pretty sad.
But I mean, I always like to say, how do these people sleep at night? Normally on Egyptian cotton and silk sheets. They're like, I just don't care. I think there's an element of of that in any population group. There's some people
Yep.
who just don't get it. It's all about them, and
Yeah.
you know, yeah, regardless. But yeah, I think I mean, well, I know increasingly more business owners, more businesses are going, hang on a minute, there's more to life. Maybe we can think about how we approach our business. How do we, bring our staff on the journey? How do we, do better by us? We're talking with a friend of mine, Sandra, on, when was I in Auckland? Wednesday. Because we're looking at launching like a governance training program for board people who are involved with B Corps and companies that want to go, or non-B Corps, but who are doing more around their social and environmental impact, to help them understand what it's actually all about. Because most governance professionals still kind of like, yeah, but it's just about making money, right? And it's like, well, yes, that's a part of it. But yeah, there's so much more to be considered, and those businesses are outperforming. So it's kind of like, if you actually just care about making more money, you should really be looking at doing more good, because the data's there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, do you think you've always been someone who's been thoughtful or considerate about purpose and doing good? Like, have you been someone who's always cared about the planet or doing good? Like, because sometimes when we interview people, they're like, yeah, like since I was 4, I was that kind of kid walking down the street, looking after sick animals or whatever. But then there's a bunch of people who more like myself, who were like, no, actually, I was pretty much looking after me until about my 30s, and then had a bit of a moment and realized there's more to life. So no judgment either way.
No, I think probably a combo. When I look back, so I was born in Hong Kong and grew up there till I was 8. And my earliest childhood memories are of rubbish and insane amounts of rubbish. And so this was the 70s, and that seeing the harbour, we used to go out boating quite a lot, but you would literally be sort of ploughing your way through tons of rubbish on the sea. And so that's always stayed with me, and it wasn't a topic that was talked about, and it was just sort of a given. Hong Kong, it's just polluted and it's yucky, and you'd go swimming in the sea and there'd be tar in the sea. And but I was also a nature lover, so I remember the conflict of those two things sort of from a very early age, and worrying about the animals and how do they swim in that, amongst all that rubbish. So, but it didn't really shape me as much as it did, I think, once I started probably having kids. And I think the nappy thing, when you start to have kids, is really confronting. And then the movement towards cloth nappies. Well, it actually wasn't a movement towards cloth; it's a movement back. So I look at, we had a nightmare actually. The generation that is sort of now back to probably the 60s, we've got a lot to answer for, because prior to that, of course, my grandmother's generation, they were darning socks, and they were using handkerchiefs, and they were everything was reusable back in those days. They were really, they were a lot more mindful and thrifty. And of course, plastic fantastic didn't exist. So I think that the backlash of the very rapid consumerism that happened in that 60s, 70s, 80s period, I feel now more than ever. And I think we were quite an early B Corp in New Zealand. I'm not sure what number, but we've had B Corp for over 3 years. And we're just in the process of doing a recertification at the moment. Well, we've just finished that. So, and I think, this being part of B Corp has really helped me think about all aspects of my personal life. So it's not the great thing about, going through that process is it's not just about your business. It's, you're looking at everything through a different lens, and how you can do better. And so then I think back again to my childhood, and I wish I remember thinking about having big nets to clean up that ocean rubbish as a kid. I remember that concept in my mind, and now it's a thing where people capture that rubbish and recycle it, and it's amazing. But yeah, so I don't know. To answer it, that's a long way of answering your question. Yes, I probably have been aware of, been quite aware from an early age, but that didn't stop me using straws for a long period of time when I was in my 20s in bars. And there's a lot of pressure to do good, and I guess what we don't want is to scare people off just picking something and making small changes, because they all add up.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny you talk about your, like your our grandparents' generation. When I first moved to New Zealand in 2004, I was doing quite a lot of flying, working as a medical rep, and I was in Queenstown for a conference. And this company, it doesn't exist anymore, but they had these like cloth belts with the buckle is like the one that you have on a plane. And I thought, oh well, that's kind of cool. I'm flying quite a lot. That's
Yeah.
a sort of quirky sense of humor, I guess. Anyway, I've still got it, and last year it started fraying quite badly on the edges, on the back where it's obviously under the most tension. And I took it to one of the repair shops in one of the local shopping malls. I said, "Oh, hi, I just want to see, if you can repair this." And the lady looked at it and went, "Yeah, but it will be cheap for you to buy a new one." I was like, "Sorry, this is the repair, and the tailoring place." It's like, I've come out of my way to come and do this. She's like, "Yeah, but," and I said, "I can't get another one. The shop doesn't exist, and also I don't care, like, because I want to keep this for another 20 years."
Yeah.
It's just like, it just bemused me that, the person in the industry of doing repairs and alterations was like, "No, just go and get a new one." But that's, I think, the modern world is just built on convenience and quick and cheap and easy. And it doesn't, I mean, I guess in some ways it does seem to be slowing down. I guess people are more aware of that, but I don't know, you just sort of think, well, as we were saying when we both started, like, we're both pretty flat out today, and it's Christmas coming next week, and that's going to be pretty busy. It's like it still doesn't feel like there's that much time for you to. I think that's half the problem for the average consumer. When do they have the time to actually stop and think with most of their decisions that they're making?
That's right.
Actually, is this the best one? And is this? I think COVID led people to have a bit of a stop and pause and start looking at some ingredients lists and what have you. But still fundamentally, it's tough.
Yeah, and actually, on Christmas, these big commercially driven holidays, I am the biggest Christmas Grinch. Like, I don't buy presents because I don't, and I also am very open to say I don't want presents for myself. There's nothing I need, and my kids are old enough to understand my grinchiness now, but there's also nothing they need. They might say otherwise, but it's that panic. I don't have anything, and then you're buying shit that is going to end up in landfill. And when we do our Black Friday sales, we say the same thing. Like, everyone loves a sale, but we never do them for one day. We any of our sales are over a period of time. So, and we always say, so that gives you time to think and really work out whether it's something you need or something you don't need. Because where that innate sense of fear of missing out is 100%. Just playing on people at the moment. And I really hate how the commercial industry operates.
Yeah, for people who are unaware, there's a really good book you can go and read. I feel like, having spent most of my life in sales and marketing, I know how the system operates. So I know when I'm being sold to. But for the uninitiated, if you go and read a book or watch a couple of YouTube videos by a guy called Robert Cialdini, who wrote a book called Influence, and he talks about the 6 tools of influence. And the number one biggest tool of influence is scarcity. And in scarcity, the biggest so you can have time scarcity, volume scarcity, what have you. The biggest lever in scarcity is time-bound scarcity. So this is only available today.
Yeah.
Which is what all of these things are built on. And you more people are more likely to be more compelled to go, fuck it, I'm buying it than not, because you have that deep sense of fear of missing out. And that's what the modern world of marketing and sales is built on. But I just think most people are blissfully unaware that the companies are playing. Yeah, they're playing with their buttons. They're watch this. We can make them all turn left now. Look at that, we did it.
It's interesting. It's always been when we first started, we refused to do any sales or participate in Black Friday, and but then I realised we were also potentially shooting ourselves in the foot, because we, our goal is to get as many people embracing sustainable period care. So if a sale can get them over the line, then that is helping us to help them and help the planet. So, I think again, it's probably a frustration for a lot of B Corps when you're trying to do good, product-based B Corps, I mean, but you really are anti that mass consumer event marketing ploys that are associated with Cyber Monday as well. How do you participate and still stay true to your values? And I think for us it's like, well, yes, sustainable period products are more expensive, but they save the user, and they're a more expensive outlay, but you save thousands of dollars making the switch. So for us, one of our Hello Capsule or Hello Disc, the average person would have paid for it after 3 periods, and then they have another sort of 5 years of use. So all the periods from that point onwards, they're just saving money because they're not buying tampons or pads. So it's the kind of that education, and it's a bit like clothing, you do get what you pay for, and a $6 t-shirt is just not going to last, probably. And so it's more beneficial from a planet perspective to buy something that's ethically made with good materials that's going to last you longer. It's a minefield out there.
It is. It is. And I guess it also ties into that, if you are struggling financially, cost of living crisis currently, inflation, blah, blah, blah. You're more focused on the here and now rather than I will invest a little bit more. But maybe for a lot of people, they actually cannot invest that little bit more right now. So like you say, it's waiting for that thing to be on a sale or what have you that gets them into the game. The more people we help with B Corp, the more people we talk to on the podcast, it's just so blindingly clear to me now, whereas it didn't used to be. I think when I first got into this whole world, I was a bit more dogmatic, and it's like you're either doing good or you're not. It's really hard. It is utterly grey, and it is all shades of grey. And we think we're doing the most good that we can. Could we do more? Possibly, but if we do that, we're going to means we can't do this. And there's always these constant trade-offs, and there's no playbook. People like yourself are building the playbook as to how we can try and do this, because it's not been done before, and so it is going to be messy. It's going to be, there's going to be, wrong paths that we go down. But I think the general intent of business owners like yourselves is the aim is to do good. We're not starting from the place of how do we maximize our financial return on this. So the intent is good, but it's always going to be tricky to maximize that impact, because we don't know how to do it. If we did, we'd all be doing it. Exactly. So with your journalism stuff, what were you focused on with that? Was there like a particular type of story or article? Is there a particularly famous one that we should all know, or would we know? And what was the big scoop?
Oh God, I did some horrible, you do some horrible cases when you're a news journalist and you're covering, things that aren't always nice. But then after being sort of a general news reporter, I became the arts reporter at the Dominion Post in Wellington, and I loved that. So that was meaning that I got essentially tickets to every gig and show that came to town, and also got to interview pretty much all the stars of those shows, and also movie stars. And you know, I I got the only New Zealand interview with Neil Diamond when he toured years ago. That was pretty exciting. Just because, I guess I grew up in a household where my parents enjoyed his music. But I loved it. I really, really loved it. And I think the arts is just a lot nicer and kinder as a subject matter to focus on.
Yeah, rather than murders, death, destruction,
Yeah.
car crashes. Yeah, if it, I mean, I guess there's the link. If it bleeds, it leads. From
That's
news
right.
journalism to periods. It's,
not so much periods, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Like again, it was interesting because when we first started the business, we couldn't get any media to do a story on us because they were like, no one wants to read about periods. And now they're very topical and kind of, the discussion around periods has infiltrated things like, all our elite athletes have specific training programs that are built around their menstrual cycle. So they are training to do with their menstrual phases, which is really cool. And absolutely now I hear people talking about period poverty is a big issue, and mainstream media have finally kind of gone, oh, okay, we can talk about it.
Yeah, it does seem to have turned the corner on that. I mean, my daughter's at an all-girls school, and they have them available. There's conversations around it. So it seems to be definitely
and
more,
that's great. That's normalizing it, putting products out, gets the conversation going.
So who was the worst celebrity that you ever interviewed? Like, who was the most what's the word I'm looking for? The most diva, or were they all pretty good?
Oh, I have to say,
or can you not spill the beans? you under
I don't know.
some NDA to not.
when you say diva, the first person that comes to mind is Kerry Takanawa. But she's quite
really?
notorious. Yeah.
Right. So you kind of knew what you were walking into.
Being tricky, yeah. So Paul Holmes was once very rude to me, but he then called up and apologized.
Oh, at least you got the apology.
Yeah, no, and actually, I had a soft spot for him. I thought he was an amazing journalist. But no, other ones are really cool. Like I remember interviewing Michael Bublé, and he sang to me down the phone.
Oh, wow.
And Donny Osmond was pretty cool. I interviewed 50 Cent, which my teenage son thought was pretty cool.
But mum's actually pretty cool now. Yeah.
Yeah.
For 30 seconds, and then you're back to
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Classic.
Think of mum. Yeah.
So can you get tickets for Tom Jones in Hawke's Bay for us?
Oh my God. Every time it just makes me feel really old when I think that people that I thought were old when I was young are still alive and performing. I'm like, God, I must be so old. And that, are they wheeling him? No offense to Tom Jones, but
possibly.
He's been around a while.
He's been around a while. Yeah. So
I reckon the undies that people throw on stage must be getting bigger and bigger.
Like balloon size. Woo! Yeah, we have parachute them in. Yeah. Oh, classic. Yeah, no, we possibly. I've got a couple of, because I'm half Welsh, so the last time I saw Tom was in Cardiff Castle in, I think, 1999 or 2000, sometime around then.
I'm proving my case then. And did you think he was pretty old then?
Yeah, I mean, at that point you kind of go, oh, he's getting on a bit. Yeah. I went to see the Rolling Stones with my mum. That would have been about 10 years ago, and you sort of go, they were old then, and they're still going. But I mean, in some ways, you kind of go, it gives me hope that maybe I might still be, doing something reasonably meaningful in 20, 30, 40 years time. Although in some ways it'd be nice to retire at some point.
Speaking of stories, I got the exclusive when Keith Richards came a cropper with a coconut.
So I would have been part of that story in some way, because so when I used to be a medical rep, and I used to sell the spinal instruments and implants that they used for head, neck, and back surgeries. And I feel like I can say this story because I don't think there's going to be any orthopedic surgeons listening to this podcast. There were in Auckland Public Hospital, there's always a on-duty orthopedic surgeon and an on-duty neurosurgeon. And there was someone in Fiji on holiday who heard that Keith Richards had banged his head and was on his way. He rang his mate, who was the orthopedic surgeon, on call. And he was one of those guys who kind of liked hanging out with famous people. And so he rang the hospital because he was on call, which doesn't mean he's in the hospital. So he rings the hospital from home and says, there is a patient, Mr. Richards, being airlifted in from Fiji. He is to be admitted under no one's care other than mine. And so he turns up to the hospital and he's like waiting for Keith Richards. Meanwhile, the flight, sending through the details, he's got what's called a subdural hematoma, which is 100% a neurosurgical procedure. And so the orthopedic and neurosurgeon end up having an argument in the hospital about who's going to take care of him. It's like, dude, it's pretty obvious. Like, if you're giving a go at neurosurgery just because you are going to kill Keith Richards, and then the surgeon who did the procedure, he had a really, because he was a client of mine. It was fascinating because he had all these neurosurgeons from all over the world ringing him saying, "Hey, I'm free. I can come over and do it." And he's like, "Well, this guy's a patient who's been admitted into my care like any other patient. I'm not going to treat him differently. I'm going to deal with the injury." And so he was like really second guessing himself. And in the end, him and Keith Richards became really great mates. And he invited him to come and be his physician on tour. So he quit his job as a neurosurgeon in Auckland City Hospital and went on tour with Stones for 18 months.
Well, I think he was the guy I spoke to.
Andrew Law was the guy. Right. Yeah. Well, there you go. Small world. Worlds collide. So he had quite a few stories after being on tour with the Stones for a little bit. Bit different.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Hanging out in the tea room at Auckland Hospital with reps like me. Well, there you go. So getting back onto the B Corp stuff then, when did that first pop up for you? Because when did you first certify?
I should have prepared this earlier, but
so we've recertification now. So 2021 would be.
Yeah, and I think from memory, I think we were about number 30 or something in New Zealand. How many are there now?
We are up to about 130 now. So I think that would be about right based on rough numbers. We were
sort of quite early on there, and I don't even remember how we first heard about it. I think it was because we were spending a lot of time in the US, and we were seeing it pop up there. And absolutely, when we first got certification, no one gave a shit because they didn't know what it was here, and it was just like, oh yeah, whatever.
Sounds great.
Yeah, and then. What's been interesting over the last 3 years was people saying, well, how did you do it? We just sort of plugged away at it ourselves, and people were like, well, how did you do it? It's really hard. And we're just like one step after another. And but I think what it's given us, I think it's not really what it's given us. Yes, it's helped us as a business. In terms of always thinking about what we're doing, is there something we can do better, really getting to know our systems and putting on paper in a mindful way what we're about and what matters to us. But also I think from a consumer perspective, it really helps you know that business is aligned with your values. If you're a mindful consumer, I guess, you don't have to do as much digging. And I definitely, I research most businesses that I buy things from. And if they've got a B Corp, I probably do less, just because I'm like, well, I know that they've been through the ringer. And we've just done the recertification, and we're tracking. Obviously, it takes a while for the results to come out. It's like waiting for your school exam marks, but we're tracking to have gone up quite a few points, which is great for us. So that means we've improved systems and added things in that B Corp recognise. But I really recommend anyone who has a business goes through that process to, again, a bit like helps you sleep at night better than a sleeping pill, because you can give yourself a pat on the back, and gives you something to aim for as well.
And I think, like
Yeah.
you say, that particularly for businesses, I mean, my business was completely built off the cuff. I have never written a business plan. It's just like I think I can do something here. Let's give it a go. But I think that the B Corp framework gives you some structure to start thinking about around a business and how and why it needs to look, and start thinking about structure. If you're less of a structured person like myself, and possibly yourself, if you just like, let's just get into it and give it a go. It's like, okay, at some point actually we need to stop and think about how we're actually doing this. So and what were the any sort of major highlights going either first time round or second time round, and anything, I guess more so first time round? Was there anything that you were sort of surprised that it asked you, or were there things that you were like, oh wow, we didn't think we were that good at doing that, but turns out we are? Or any major shocks?
I think what I was pleasantly surprised about was the emphasis that it's not just on your business as such, the outward facing business, it's actually also on the team, and how you can make sure your team are looked after. And so we've just introduced an ESOP, a staff ESOP, and things like that, which actually has always been on our agenda since day one, and we've talked about it from day one, but it's, for a small business, it's something that's very hard to implement, and actually it's very expensive to implement. So it's again, it would be great if someone could come along and make that process easier and simpler. Because
have you seen there's a company called Orchestra based in Auckland?
Well, yes. So we are with we did, but you see, we didn't do our ESOP through Orchestra because that we're such a small team. It's you still need
a bit more. Because how big is your team?
At the moment we're about 4.5.
Okay.
So tiny. So you kind of need just a
that little
play bit. and then anyway. But Orchestra's great.
I think again, this is just a great summary of, as we say to our clients, it's like, do as much good as you can with what you've got. And if giving ownership in the company is going to blow the business to pieces, and it's going to make it mean that you go bust, well, it's probably not the best thing to do, just so that you can say, for 10 minutes, we were an employee-owned company before we had to go into receivership. But having that, but again, using the framework as to sort of go, okay, look, that's a really cool idea. This is the threshold we need to be at when we can have that conversation. But hey, if you keep working with us, if you're good employees, if you hang out with us, if you are part of the vibe and connect to the purpose, this is what we're going to aim at. Super cool. And so what does being a B Corp mean to you?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's so much for us, because we know that we are true to ourselves and our values, and have always wanted to, everything we do, we like to do well and and stand behind. But I do think again, it's meaningful for our customers to know that they're supporting a business that's part of this group, that is holding others to account. That's how I see B Corps as being a really powerful. It's a really powerful movement and the more of us who join, the more other businesses go, okay, well, I probably need to pull my socks up. I don't want to look bad. So I think, so for us, it's just being part of the team, the wider B Corp team.
Nice. Nice. And I guess I should have asked this before, because we're on that topic, but in terms of that tension between doing good or doing more good and keeping the money coming in, any tips or tricks or anything that comes to mind with that
Yeah,
sort of area?
I mean, so we really struggled with that at the start because what we wanted to do was help everyone with a period, and we literally gave away thousands and thousands of dollars worth of products, and potentially almost went under because we weren't doing things right. You can't save the world if you're not viable. And there's a time and place. So I think we do good by creating a product that reduces waste and is better for the consumer that buys it. And we still do a lot of donations, but we have systems in place now. Before literally we'd just give away stock and it wouldn't even go through the system. We'd just be, here, have this, have this. And the best thing that we can do for the planet is survive as a business. So we have to work towards continuing to be a profitable business, and the more places we are, the better we do for the planet. So I've learnt that, I think, the hard way. We've sailed too close to the wind by trying to be too kind all the time. Not to say that we're not kind, but yeah, you can definitely shoot yourself in the foot trying to be a hero.
Yeah, totally.
Heroine.
Yeah. No, it's so true, and that's the advice we give to our clients is, like I say, do as much as you can with what you've got, but don't overextend yourself, because there's been plenty of examples of businesses trying to overextend on the impact, but if you haven't got that steady ship, you will go under. And it's that well-worn cliche of you can't fill from an empty vessel. You have to be full, and it needs to be overflowing. It can't be in drought, trying to eke out one more drop to give out to the last person, then you both die. And I think you're another example of a high scoring, because I think you were over 100 in your first time score, which is a great score for a first time B Corp. So that's kind of just proves that you're doing a lot of good from day one. You're just another great example of a B Corp, where the bigger your business gets, the more impact you're having. It's 100% indexed, whereas it's not always the case. There are some B Corps who, okay, you're a better business because you're a B Corp, but fundamentally the product you're selling, you can kind of go, do we really need that in the world? And maybe they've got more of an index to, well, if we're doing well, we give more to charity. But yours is clearly, the more we sell, the more impact happens.
That's right. And we've now got a tracker on our website, so we've diverted over 500 million single-use period products from landfill since we started. And our goal, which we will smash, is 1 billion by 2030. So it's pretty cool to have something that people can really get their heads around like that. And it's a lot.
That is a lot. What would that look like in terms of like volume if you did it in the old rugby pitches or stadiums?
I don't know. I need to do that.
You need to do that.
Going around the globe.
Have some real visual image. It's like, I reckon what's like the big international stadium that everyone would know? It's like, how many concerts would you be able to have?
The problem with this scenario though is that maths is not my strong suit, so I need someone else to do it, because I'm like, okay, that sounds a whole lot like measurements and then working out some sort of circumference-y thing.
Equations and percentages.
I'm the creative brain.
100%. I didn't get the maths gene at all. Mainly also due in part to Mrs. Dalrymple, my maths teacher, when I was about 7 or 8, who I just didn't understand something, and she just said in front of the whole class, "Timothy, you're an idiot to not be able to understand this."
Oh my God, she sounds like the perfect storybook character.
Pretty much, yeah. They were her and her husband. He was the headmaster. She was the head of maths. Interesting couple, to say the least. But hey, we're all here now, aren't we? So we're all having fun. But me and maths, whenever I do talks or training events, I always pick on the accountants and people from marketing, because it's a pure projection on the accountants, because I'm just so shit with numbers, and marketing, because I come from a sales background, and everyone knows that the marketeer is just like crayons and colouring in, and the salespeople do all the real work. So that's how I roll. I'm an equal opportunities offender when it comes to offending the crowd who've paid me money to talk.
Awesome.
um, so you're on the cusp of your next recertification. So obviously the worker ownership is that what's taken you up on the scores? I would imagine that's typically an area. What were the other areas that lifted you? Do you know?
We have also one of our products we were making in Australia. We've brought manufacturing back to New Zealand.
Nice.
We've worked really hard on bringing back or printing, packaging, manufacturing into New Zealand.
Very cool.
And what else? Reducing. We're actually all working. We're fully remote now, so having a dedicated office with sort of extra that we don't. So very low. We're not traveling anywhere. The staff aren't traveling anywhere. Well, unless it's for work, obviously. But there's no daily commute for us. I think those are probably the key ones.
Nice, very cool. And so, what does the future hold? Where next for Hello? Period.
We're focusing on Australia at the moment. We were working a lot in the US, but I think post-COVID and again shipping, freight, all those costs and carbon craziness, we thought dial it back, focus closer to home. But really, we just want to keep building brand and awareness and educating people about the benefits of reusable, sustainable period products. We'll just keep talking, and we see a big future for us in mainstream. We spent a lot of years sort of fighting the idea of being in mass consumer places like supermarkets, but actually that's where we need to be to have the biggest impact. And so kudos to the supermarkets that give shelf space to products that don't turn over as quickly as others, so because we all know shelf space is so valuable. And so for us, we're in Countdowns in New Zealand and Chemist Warehouse and Bargain Chemist, and we're not going to be selling like shampoo might be, or things that are just used regularly. Products last for years, but I think there is actually a huge onus on those supermarkets and big chain stores to do their part and to encourage their customers to buy sustainably where possible. But I understand that's a bit of a friction point for them, but the businesses that are doing it, I think I definitely am more loyal to them and would shop there.
I think it's just all this tension, isn't it? And I think increasingly it seems that certainly what we're seeing from the UK and Europe, so Waitrose in the UK, big supermarket chain in the UK, that they have in-store promotions around, hey, these brands are B Corp. On their online store, you can search by brands that are B Corp. So I think we're seeing this trend where for the supermarkets and the big box retailers, they can make themselves look better right now by working with brands like yours. And I think there is what it feels like there's a slowly edging, creeping towards a bit of a switch where actually they're recognizing that it's not about how many we shift. It's bigger than that. So I think you'll look back in 20-30 years time and realize how much part of that movement you were, because I think at the minute there's a whole bunch of cool, interesting stuff happening that's it's fringy, it's edgy, it's pushing boundaries, and it's hard to actually know really how much impact it's all having. But I think in 20 or 30 years time, again, we'll look back and go, God, do you remember those days in the supermarkets where basically they only stock stuff that sold like every 30 seconds? Man, can you imagine what crazy world that was? So super cool.
Bring it on.
I think it's getting there. It's getting there. Hey, well, thank you so much for your time. It's been great to get to know you, particularly with all your Christmas craziness that you've got happening with you. I think we're a few days away from that yet. So watch this space. But yeah, no, love what you're doing. Keep up the amazing work, and
thank you.
Yeah,
you too.
Hope you have a great.
Thank you for
great end of the
helping
year.
so many people on this journey, because it's really, it's tough, and it's great to have someone out there that can help hold people's hand.
Thanks. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, we'll see ya.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, it's Tim here, that B Corp bloke from Grow Good. If you want more content on purpose, B Corp, how to do more good in the world as an individual or a business, then you know the drill. Hit the like and subscribe. Check out some of our other videos. They're probably floating around here somewhere. You know how it works. Thank you so much. See you next time.